Lillian Hall Davis was a popular leading lady of British silent cinema and transitioned to starring in the Talkies, but after just three, she retired. Why? Join me as I investigate. Lillian Hall Davis was born in London in 1898. There isn't a lot of information about her early life and family out there, but we do know that her father was a taxi driver. According to her obituary, she began acting in films in 1915, but the first credit I could find was 1917's French silent La Petite du Cygne. She made her English film debut in 1918 in a screen adaptation of J. M. Barrie's The Admirable Crichton. Lillian spent the next 4 years playing supporting roles in a number of films before getting her first starring role in 1922's The Wonderful Story, a touching drama about two brothers that fall for the same woman, Kate, played by Lillian. Fortunately, this film survives. While I couldn't find any critical reviews of it, I did find a nice review for Lillian about her next film, Brown Sugar, in Picturegoer magazine, which stated that she did great work in it. Since Lillian starred in two more films later in 1922, I can only assume that the first two did well commercially. Lillian entered 1923 as a successful leading lady in Britain. She first starred as Stephanie in the high-profile Napoleon drama A Royal Divorce. The film appears to have been a critical and commercial hit on both sides of the Atlantic. Riding on the coattails of the success of A Royal Divorce, Lillian starred in 7 more films in 1923 alone. One is the surviving Married Love, which, at that time, was considered a scandalous release as it was loosely based on Marie Stopes' 1918 book of the same name, which detailed sex and birth control for married couples. In the film, Lillian played Maisie, a maid who eventually finds love. In 1924, Lillian was summoned to Italy to star with Emil Jannings and Elena Sangro and Arturo Ambrosio and Gabrielino's D'Annunzio's extensive production of Quo Vadis, which also thankfully survives. Lillian portrayed Licia, a young Christian girl in love with a Roman general in the time of Nero's persecution of Christians in Rome. Deborah Kerr would portray the same role in the 1951 remake. While the film was impressively made with great acting and beautiful scenery, it was very costly and apparently was both a commercial and critical failure on both sides of the Atlantic. However, it has gone on to achieve a more lasting legacy. Lillian returned to England to star in 3 more films, including 1924's The Unwanted, before going to Germany to star in 3 films there in 1925, including Liebe macht blind, which also starred Conrad Veidt. Lillian returned to England again in 1926 to star in Adventure Mad, in which she played Gladys Clifton, a wealthy woman whose husband runs off from her to find adventure in Cairo and beyond. The film got her a nice mention in Film Daily. However, Lillian was about to enter her 2 biggest years as a British silent screen star. She began 1927 starring in Blighty, a popular World War I drama. She then starred in the successful French drama The Prey of the Wind. However, her more lasting legacy came about when she met and began working with Alfred Hitchcock. First, he cast her as Mabel, one of the leading roles in his 1927 drama The Ring, which also starred Carl Brisson and Ian Hunter. Mabel was a carnival girl who worked out a gimmick with her fiancé Jack, played by Brisson, to lure unsuspecting people in to pay to essentially lose to one-round Jack in the boxing ring. Their gimmick and romance is threatened when a talented boxer, Bob, played by Hunter, comes into the picture. While it was not a huge commercial hit, The Ring was a critical one on both sides of the Atlantic, and Lillian was a hit in it for her performance. Variety wrote, Hitchcock gets more out of Lillian Hall Davis than any other continental director has yet done, and at times makes her reminiscent of Laia de Putti. I agree. While Lillian portrayed lovely and emotional ingenues up to this point, Mabel was her most interesting part to date, allowing Lillian to really demonstrate her talent. Hitchcock then starred Lillian again in his follow-up film, this time a comedy entitled The Farmer's Wife, which was based on a popular play of the same name. Lillian played Minta, the faithful maid of a farmer, Jameson Thomas, who sets out to find a new wife for her lonely boss after his daughter gets married and leaves the house. It was another wonderful performance in a film that was a critical and commercial hit. Hitchcock himself later said of Lillian, She was an amazing girl. On the set, she suffered from acute self-consciousness. She had an acute inferiority complex in regard to her ability to play certain parts. And I remember that she turned down an extremely good role because she wasn't sure she could do it well enough. Actually, she could have played it with ease. Yet, in her private life, she was an altogether different person. She possessed a terrific personality and amazing vivacity. Following The Farmer's Wife, Lillian starred in two more silents, Tommy Atkins in England and Volga Volga in Germany. She then took 2 years off from the movies. She could have wanted to enjoy some more time with her husband Walter Pemberton, an actor, and their son. However, Hitchcock's quote about Lillian makes me wonder if she was self-conscious about the transition from silence to talkies and afraid to jump in as the new medium was emerging. However, in 1930, she did make her talkie debut starring in Just for a Song, which was a musical partly filmed in color. In 1931, Lillian played a supporting role in Her Reputation before starring in what would be her final film, Many Waters, in which the Daily Mirror stated that she gave a great moving performance. Sadly, Lillian had begun to suffer from depression around 1930, which made it difficult for her to work. Sources are divided if it was caused by her lack of work or if she stopped working due to it. But she became increasingly depressed and withdrew from public life for the most part, moving with her family to the Golders Green area of London. According to an article in the Evening Standard, she initially attempted to return to acting only to find little opportunities. She was then invited to star in a few films but told the studios that, "My nerves are gone, I cannot act." Sadly, her depression became increasingly worse, and in October of 1933, while her husband was off acting in a play and her son was at school, she tragically took her own life. She was only 35 years old. So we are left with the question, why did Lillian Hall Davis retire after making just 3 talkies? Sadly, I think her struggle with mental illness was the culprit. As Hitchcock stated, Lillian was a wonderfully talented actor, but her own nerves seemed to have held her back from really going places with her career once the talkies hit. I'm not sure if any offers came in before 1930, but I can only assume that they must have since she was doing so well in the silence. I only wish that when Lillian was feeling better and was trying to work after her retirement, that someone had taken her up on her offer while she was feeling up to it. I wonder if that gesture might have saved her life. Lillian Hall Davis was an extraordinary talent who deserved better. Please do me a favor and check out some of Lillian's wonderful work on YouTube: The Wonderful Story, Quo Vadis, The Ring, and The Farmer's Wife. Let's get her name more often included among the ranks of Hitchcock's talented leading ladies, which she more than deserves. I must thank my sources for this episode: the Hitchcock Zone, Manchester Evening News, the Daily Mirror, the Evening Express, European Film Star Postcards, Trav Estie's blog Travalanche, Find a Grave, Media History Digital Library for their digitization of Picturegoer, and archive.org for their digitization of Film Daily and Variety. Please like and subscribe or follow this account if you want to learn more about the history of silent film stars whose stardom lasted only briefly in the talkies. Up next, join me as I investigate the silent, the talkie career of Thurston Hall. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a great day.